the most scariest kids to ever live, part 2. This is John Venables and Robert Thompson. In the winter of 1993, John Venables and Robert Thompson, both 10 years old at the time, became the youngest convicted murderers in England. On February 12, 1993, the boys abducted a 2-year-old named James Bulger. The boys brought him to a local railroad track, where they brutally beat the boy using an iron bar. Then finally, they let him die on the railroad tracks, and his body was later found there by authorities. Somehow, despite committing this gruesome murder, both boys were released from prison in 2001 when they turned 18 years old, and they both now live under new identities. This was very disturbing, especially because two 10-year-old boys committed this horrible crime. These are crazy World War II facts that will blow your mind. First, to avoid the German-sounding name hamburger, the United States changed the name of a hamburger to Liberty Steak. Next up, Adolf Hitler's nephew, William Hitler, actually served in the United States Navy during World War II, which is pretty crazy. Next up, if it was necessary to use a third atomic bomb, the next city that would have been targeted by the United States was Tokyo, Japan. Finally, the total amount of deaths in World War II were between 50 million and 70 million people. 80% of which only came from 4 countries: Russia, China, Germany, and Poland. And over 50% of the casualties were civilians, with the majority being women and children. These are pictures that you have to look at twice, part 8. Up first is a picture of a teacher who peed himself. But if you take a closer look at the picture, you can see that he actually did not pee himself, and that's just a reflection off the glass. Next up is a picture of a dog who has a human head. But if you look at the photo more closely, you can see that the dog is laying on top of somebody and the dog's head is just hidden. Next up is a photo of what appears to be Earth from space. But that is not what it actually is. This is actually a photo of frost on top of somebody's car. Finally is a photo of a concert. Or at least that's what it looks like. But if you take a closer look at the photo, you can actually see that it is just a cotton picker at night. This is what your favorite color says about you, part 3. Up first, if your favorite color is orange, you always listen to other people's opinions but never your own. Also, you're very social and bring the party wherever you go. And no matter what life throws at you, you always stay calm and get through it. Next up, if your favorite color is yellow, you don't have a lot of friends, but the friends you have are friends for life. And your attitude is very bright and happy. Also, you'd rather stay home alone and just relax than go out with friends. Next, if your favorite color is brown, you are obsessed with trying to make money. You also love the outdoors and nature altogether. And you do things slow and steady to get it done the right way the first time. This is the most scariest video on the internet explained. The video is called Dining Room or Nothing. In the video, a woman with a pale face stares at the viewer before saying something that we cannot understand. She then unnaturally drops her face into the bowl in front of her while very creepy piano music plays in the background. The video then plays back in reverse, and now we understood what she said. She said, "There is nothing." But the truth behind this video is to know what happens after death. The woman dies only to come back and tell you that there is nothing after death, heaven, or hell. She is stuck in a constant loop and will never be able to escape. Now here is the video of Dining Room or Nothing. This is the scary story about the hot summer night. One beautiful hot summer night, a girl named Julie was swimming with her boyfriend in her pool. They then decided to go skinny dipping. Her boyfriend stood behind her and wrapped his arms around her. He then kissed her shoulder as they looked at the night sky, dreaming of a future together. A few minutes later, they heard a strange noise coming from the bushes, but they weren't paying much attention to it. They were so comfortable together. Just then, Julie turned around to kiss her boyfriend, but she didn't see anything behind her. She turned around and realized that her boyfriend's head was missing. It had been cut off. Julie let out a terrifying scream as his headless corpse sank to the bottom of the pool. In a panic, she scrambled out of the pool and ran inside her house to warn her parents. When she got to the kitchen, she came face to face with her stepfather, who was washing his bloody hands in the sink. This is the scary story about the barber. One day, a man named Jack was going to get a haircut. When he got to the barber shop, He realized he was the only customer when it's usually packed. And there was only one barber in there who he never seen before. Jack didn't think much of this, so he just sat down in the seat. The barber started cutting his hair and talking to him. Then he pulled out the spray bottle to get his hair wet, but instead the barber sprayed it all on Jack's face. Jack got pretty upset, but he brushed it off. Then he began to get very tired, and suddenly he passed out. He then woke up in some empty room tied to an operating table. He was shaking with fear. Suddenly the door opened and the barber came in. He then said, "You're not my first victim. I do this to every single one of my customers. Don't be scared, be happy. You're about to meet your maker." He then pulled out a knife and stabbed it into Jack's stomach. The last thing Jack ever saw was the barber cutting off his legs and laughing hysterically. These are the most deadliest storms in history, part 1. Up first is Galveston, Texas. This is the deadliest hurricane in US history, and it happened at the turn of the 20th century. This was a category 4 out of 5 hurricane, and the wind speed was anywhere between 130 miles an hour and 156 miles an hour. 15-foot waves came on land and destroyed everything in their sight. It is estimated that 8,000 to 12,000 people died during this deadly storm. Next is Hurricane Katrina. This storm was a category 5 in Miami, but when it hit Louisiana, it was a category 3 storm. This is arguably one of the most notorious storms in history. Countless people lost their homes, businesses, and loved ones. More than 1,200 people died during this horrible storm, and it caused $108 billion in damage. These are the most scariest kids to ever live, part 1. This is Aaron Campbell. He snatched a 6-year-old girl named Alicia McPhail from her bed while she was visiting her dad and grandparents. Aaron Campbell, who was 16, abducted, raped, and murdered a 3-foot-tall young girl, causing catastrophic injuries before dumping her body in the woods. Alicia was a very happy girl and adored by her family, and her body was later discovered naked and face down. The court said she had 117 different injuries. Aaron Campbell was found guilty by the jury of her abduction, rape, and murder, and also the judge said it was the wickedest and most evil crime he had ever seen. Aaron Campbell was sentenced to life in prison. These are the scariest things ever found in fast food, part 2. Up first, an Alabama man found a condom inside of his Big Mac. The man threw out the Big Mac and then filed a lawsuit against McDonald's. The worst part about this whole situation is that they will never know whose condom that was. Next up is a human finger inside a bowl of chili from Wendy's. This severed finger was actually planted by a woman, and she was then sentenced to 4 years in prison. Finally, a man from Florida went to Arby's to get a sandwich, but he never would have imagined that human skin will be in his sandwich. The man found multiple pieces of human flesh in his sandwich and immediately threw out the sandwich and filed a complaint. Most scary games to play in real life, part 3. This is the window game. I recommend not to try this because it could be the last thing you do. The origin of this game is unknown. To play the game, you need a window with blinds. It has to be done at night, and it has to be the last night of the month. To start the game, you have to stand in front of your window at midnight with the window wide open. You're not going to be able to see anything. Then mentally, you have to summon a presence. You must focus and take the time you need, and invite it to come. This is how you will get its attention. Once you finish, make sure to close the window properly, and then lay in your bed and turn off the lights. You will know you done it right if after 30 minutes, you start hearing knocking and noises coming from the window. This is where the real game begins. That spirit must never know you're awake. You have to stay perfectly still, as if you were in deep sleep, and you must never look on what's on the other side of the window. The bangs and the noises will get louder, but you have to ignore. Everyone who looked out the window was never seen or heard from again. The spirit will go away when the sun rises.